Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the latest edition of The Mayor and I, with me, Lindsay Khan, and the prospective Mayor of Greater Manchester, Nick Buckley, MBE. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, Nick. Sorry. All right. Nice to see you. And today, as per our last podcast, we're going to look at local events, given that the mayoral election is quite close now. 2 weeks.
2 weeks, yep.
2nd of May, and we're taking a look at local events and Nick's take on some of those issues that are happening at the moment. And again, as last time, 3 primary areas: the police, crime, and motorists is a new one, sorry, apologies, and morality and honesty with our politicians.
Yeah.
And again, these articles and discussion points have been taken from the Manchester Evening News, and again, it's surprising how how many incidents are actually happening within the Greater Manchester area in these.
There's a handful every day.
Yeah.
Handful every day.
So the first one, we'll get straight into it. On the police, we've got 3 issues that have occurred with the police in the last few days. The first one is, it appears a Greater Manchester police officer deliberately sought out and attacked a man in a mosque kitchen. I don't know what a mosque kitchen is, over a WhatsApp disagreement. Now, Why has this piqued your interest, Nick?
It has nothing to do with a mosque, nothing to do about this man being a Muslim. This is about, again, recruitment. Who are we recruiting to be police officers when a serving police officer says to himself, I don't like what you've said on WhatsApp? Probably personal, it might be insulting, I get that, but I am a serving police officer, so I'm going to go to the mosque where you're working and I'm going to give you a smack in the head. And it's like, how's he passed recruitment? If he can do this within his community, within his religious community.
Oh, was he a Muslim as well?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
So the mosque kitchen was the kitchen in the mosque?
In the mosque.
All right, so he headed to the mosque.
Yeah.
Went to the kitchen and smacked the bloke over the head or whatever.
Yeah, no, spot on. That's exactly what he's done. And if he's quite willing to do that, what's he willing to do when he's policing the streets and he's dealing with somebody else?
Yeah.
This comes back down to recruitment again. How are we allowing such people to join the police? Because when we do, and now he's been sacked, the first accusation will be, it's because I'm a brown Muslim. Well, no, it's not. The reason why you've been sacked is because we gave you a job because you're a brown Muslim, but you weren't good enough, and now we've had to sack you. So the police now have made a rod for their own back. And how is their recruitment process not filtering out such erratic behaviour, such short fuse, such an ability to forget he's a police officer and go and assault someone? He must have known this person's going to report him. He must have known that. In which case, he's too stupid to realise, or he didn't care. And again, let's go back to recruitment. How can we recruit officers who don't care? I'm just flabbergasted every time I read these stories. And this has been to court now, been proven guilty.
Right.
So this isn't like, it could have been, no.
It's not alleged, this is actual. I maybe have a different take on this, which is, maybe when he joined the police force, he was the right person. He did have the right views and thought he would have to behave in a certain way. But maybe once he got into the police force, maybe the way the internal standards, the internal strictures of the police force are so poor that he thought he could get away with it. Maybe he got maybe he joined as a bright young cadet or whatever and thought I'll be honourable and all that sort of stuff. And then once he got inside, it was such a shambles. He thought, I can do what the hell I want. Is that not a possibility?
That is a possibility.
Yeah.
Before I worked for the police and with the police, this 20 years ago, I was based in police stations. I wasn't a police officer. I thought the police were a lot like you see on TV. And when you start working with the police, you realise, I could be a criminal and never get caught, not with these idiots. And that's not a criticism of the police officers, that's a criticism of TV. TV make everything look easy. We found this fingerprint and this bit of DNA and Well, if every crime we had a fingerprint in DNA, the departments that do that would be overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So it's not like it is on TV, and that was a learning curve for me 20 years ago. So he probably has realised that, do you know what, I probably can do what I want because I'm a police officer, they'll believe my word more than anybody else's. But also there's another example here that could be power corrupts. And once you give anybody power, and we're all susceptible to this.
I agree.
Once you give people power, it can go to their head. And then maybe being a police officer several years, he's decided, I'm untouchable. And this probably isn't the first time he's abused his position.
Yeah.
And we said this last time, hardly anyone gets caught the first time.
How many other people has he given a slap to,
Yeah.
and they've not reported it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done other things, but
Yeah.
who are they going to believe, me
Yeah.
or you?
Yeah.
I'm a serving police
Yeah.
officer. And most people would go, oh, well, yeah, you're right.
And that's the point, isn't it? He will also be aware from working in the police how few crimes are solved. How I mean, the percentages are ridiculous. Burglaries, it's something like 95% of burglaries are never, goods are never recovered, criminals are never captured. So he would be aware of the woeful record of crime solving in the police as well. So probably thinks, well, I'll get away with it, won't I?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it may be a recruitment issue, but I just wonder if the general kind of sickness of the police institutions as they are at the moment is part of the reason that might have happened, possibly.
Possibly. I got a message the other day through a friend of mine, so I don't know who this person is, but she's a serving police officer in Greater Manchester Police, who passed on a message that she's unhappy with some of my comments on Greater Manchester Police.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I've had lots of messages in support of what I'm saying from police officers, but this one was a negative one. She felt I'm picking on the police all the time. Now, in one way, she's perfectly correct. I am purposely picking on the police because the mayor will be the police crime commissioner.
Yeah.
And there's no service in the country more important than the police. And my answer to her, if she watches these podcasts, would be, unless we shine a light on where the police are failing, it will never get better. Now, she might be a very good officer, and we've had this conversation before. I think most officers are very good officers.
You've said that with no justification, no evidence.
No evidence and no justification.
No empirical data.
Just based on human nature, I would say most officers want to be good officers. If they're failing, it's usually down to the system itself. But the only way we change the system is for people like me and other people to point out where the failures are. We don't improve the police by covering up these sort of incidents. We change the police by shining a light on these incidents, which then make the bad apples in the police go, right, I need to start behaving myself because this light could be shining on me next week. So I just want to raise that. It's not always positive for police officers.
And I think, again, there's an interesting point there, isn't there, that we are heading to a society now where you aren't allowed to criticise certain things. And I think the police is kind of under that. The NHS used to be under that banner. I think people are now happy to criticise the NHS. The police have been, for a long time, there's always been an understanding they can't be criticised. But I think we need to be criticising the police. We need to be criticising the NHS. That's the job of people to as you say, shine a light on these behaviours. And the lady's comment, if it was a lady who's
it was a female police officer.
Yeah. My response to her would be, if the police force are doing everything right the way they should be doing, there will be no criticism. Yeah. So asking not to be criticised is fine if you are without effectively sin, basically. Yeah. But I think the police force has got a lot to answer for, and that kind of brings us into our next topic here, which is there's a TikTok video apparently which is going viral, where it's in Greater Manchester in Rochdale, where a policeman arrives in a car chasing a criminal, jumps out of the car, leaves his door open, runs after the criminal, and then some young lads then get into his car and drive it off. And you think this, and I kind of understand why you've raised this, because I think your point on this is this would not have happened 10, 20 years ago if this situation occurred. So why is this happening now? What is happening that young people feel that they can do these things with the police?
Yeah, and that's why I raised this. Not to criticise the officer for leaving the keys in the engine. which he shouldn't have done. But do you know what? When the heat of the moment, adrenaline pumping,
He's chasing a criminal.
You're trying to catch the bad guy.
He's a good guy.
So he's made a mistake, but I'm not here to criticise him for that because we all make mistakes. It's the fact that we have young people in our country on our estates now who have no fear of the police, and it's more than that. They have no fear of the criminal justice system because they don't know anyone who's really been punished ever. How we would class a punishment. So these kids have gone, let's jump in this car and go for a joyride. And because it was in a dead-end street, they had to reverse the car out, driving all over the pavement backwards. Could have hit anybody. And it's, how are these young people, I mean, they're probably early teenagers, how are these people not scared of being caught? I'd be terrified of being caught. What are they going to do to me? But these young people have been through the criminal justice system and realises it just means that I'm going to have to meet that woman again every fortnight in the probation officer and have a chat about why I've not got a dad and my feelings, and I'll get a group hug once every now and again. And it's like, that's not a punishment, it's not a deterrent.
And that, you know, this idea of youth, disaffected youth, not being worried about what happens to them, and I know we're talking about Manchester here, but I read an article the other day about crime in Sweden and how now 14, 15-year-old people are killing other people on the instruction of gang members. And there was a video of some journalists going into Sweden, this particular area, and actually being attacked on camera, and I think there were police around as well. And it's kind of, it's almost like those barriers are breaking down now. The young people, certain criminals, almost feel they can do whatever the hell they want, and this is an example of it, isn't it?
I saw that.
Did you see that video?
The police took the camera crew in.
That's it, yes. The police
to interview the people about how nice the area was, and then the police are like, well, we need to go now. And they're like, oh no, we're going to stay a bit longer. Okay. And once the police left, they got robbed, they got assaulted. It's like, well, your story's changing a bit now, isn't it? This isn't such a nice area now. You've not got armed police next to it.
Because I think they were kind of left wing. It's not terrible here at all, we'll show you. Went in with the police left, and then they got attacked. Quite viciously, actually.
Well, it was, I can't remember the name of the place now, something like, I'd know if you said it, Malmo.
Oh, I don't know.
What did you say then?
Malmo, I was going to say.
That's it. Malmo. It was there.
Right.
And Malmo is the bombing capital of Europe.
Sweden is one of the most. I know. Sweden is now bizarrely one of the most dangerous places in Europe.
For rape, for grenade attacks, for bombs, and it's all gang related. It's the Albanians fighting this, fighting that, fighting over turf, fighting over who runs the underworld. Extremely violent place now.
That's related to immigration, but that's a completely other story. So final story on here. There was a survey of Greater Manchester Police in terms of morale and job satisfaction, and what were the results of that?
Not surprising to me, but might be surprising to other people. I can't. What were the figures? Was it
16%? Want to leave within the next 2 years.
2 years, and 80%
want more money.
So there's two issues there. So let's deal with the more money one first. First of all, it's a loaded question. You ask. I mean, I'm surprised it's as low as 80%. Who doesn't want more money? If you ask employees, we're thinking of giving you pay rises. Oh, no, boss, you pay us more than enough. No. So the pay rise itself is understandable. The 16% who want to leave, now that's a worrying figure, because so many police officers are leaving. The longer you've been in the police now, the more you want to leave because you joined for different reasons 20 years ago. And the more older police officers who leave before they get to retirement, we're losing all their experience and knowledge of the way of doing things, who's a criminal in this area. So the new officers coming in are having to start from scratch again. So there's a big dip in public confidence and the ability to solve crime. I don't think police pay would be as much of a problem as it is on this survey if the police job itself, if being a police officer was a better job, if they got more satisfaction out of it, if there was less politics involved in it, if they didn't feel that law-abiding citizens now despise them and not supporting them. You can handle criminals hating you because that's your job. But when you've got normal law-abiding people now who are beginning, and it's gone quite far, beginning to not support the police anymore because we feel you're not on our side. Well, to do that job, which has now become a difficult, rubbish job to do, well, of course you want more money, because the harder the job is, the more money you want to do it. If they were waking up in the morning going, today's the day I get to hammer criminals and I love my job, well, you'll accept slightly less money because you're getting job satisfaction. But when there's no job satisfaction, the only thing that keeps you in that position is more money. And that's where we've led the police to now.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we've led them there, but I think they've helped themselves on this road, haven't they? If we see,
it's the top class.
Yeah, but if we see now, if we just look over the past 4 years, let's go back 4 years to COVID, and in Manchester particularly, the way the police, the draconian enforcing of the COVID laws, the behaviours around that, people told they couldn't go to the park, being arrested for that side, the abysmal crime solving rates within the Greater Manchester area, and they are abysmal basically. Seeing things like police taking a knee for this is all in Manchester by the way,
BLM.
Taking the knee for BLM, dressed in rainbow coloured suits, supporting LGBT, which has got nothing to do with their job at all. All these things, can they be surprised the public are disaffected and have such a low opinion of them?
They can be surprised, as in many police officers would have bought into this. So how can you be upset with what I'm doing? I thought we all wanted to be pink and fluffy because we're recruiting the wrong types of police officers. But the real blame for this is the top brass, but above the top brass are politicians. You know, the top brass take their directions from the mayor of Greater Manchester. And before there was a mayor, they would take it off the police crime authority, who are all local elected politicians. So because it's a public service, they take their directions off elected politicians. And who elects those politicians? We do. So as citizens of this country, of this city, we need to take some responsibility that we did allow this to happen under our watch by voting for the politicians who then ruined the police.
And this is a really interesting point, and I'm not sure what the answer is, but we're coming up to the mayoral elections now, 2nd of May. In my opinion, you would be a fantastic mayor for Greater Manchester, and I'm going to vote for you, and I know a number of other people are going to vote for you as well. It's highly likely, however, that Andy Burnham will win the mayorship as well. And the reason he will win is because only activist voters will come out and vote for him. The majority of the public will remain at home. 2/3
of people don't vote in this mayor election.
And it's this awful vicious circle, isn't it? People don't vote because they are so disenchanted and disenfranchised with the political system. Then they spend the next 4 years complaining about the behaviours of the politicians. And I don't know how we get around that. I was just reflecting on it now. Is compulsory voting the way to make this happen? To forcing people to vote, and then if you force people to vote, Andy Burnham wouldn't get in because most people wouldn't vote for him. They'd vote for somebody else or an independent or whatever it might be. But we've got this awful cycle. It's happening all over, isn't it? All the councils. It's happening with the Labour councillors. It's happening in the areas like Rochdale where most of the councillors are now Muslim because the Muslims are voting for the Muslims and nobody else can be bothered to vote. And you're getting these silos of parties in power, groups in power, whether it's a Muslim group, whether it's a Labour group or whatever it might be, who are voted in by effectively a small number of activist voters, and they are carrying out policies not that the majority of people agree with. It's an awful situation. How do we get out of it?
So a good example would be the last election. Andy Burnham won the election on 17% of the electorate. So when you count the people who didn't vote and added it, 17%, that's how he won. How do we get people to take this more seriously? There is two ways. The first way, as you said, is compulsory voting. They do that in Australia. You are fined if you do not vote. They check it all. The other way is you just wait. You wait until things are that bad that people have to go out and vote. And that's how we got the vote in the first place. Things were so bad that people took to the streets, risked violence, risked being killed, and had battles for us to get the vote. So do we wait until everything is so much more worse before people go, well, I can't stand this anymore? So I don't know what they're the only two answers I can think of.
Just talking about the violence thing, I noticed your video on is violence the answer to, I can't remember what the terminology was, but it's
violence is coming.
Violence is coming.
Yeah.
I noticed that got a lot of views and a lot of comments from people. Basically, I don't know if you were actually saying violence is coming, but I think they were basically saying, yes, this is going to happen if something isn't done soon. And that got a lot of views, that video. So people are thinking about this, aren't they? I'm
getting comments of people saying they're waiting for the violence. And it's just quite surprising. I'm having to say to those people, violence isn't the answer. But the answer is voting. And we can avoid all these issues and violence if the people who are most affected by this just got off the backsides and voted. But I understand why they're disenfranchised.
Yeah.
Because they voted other times in their life. They voted for Brexit. And we only got Brexit in name only, really.
Brexit never happened, really.
No, not the way we wanted it to happen. We get prime ministers and then they're ousted. Well, Boris Johnson I voted for him, but he was a fool. He turned into, I got proven wrong. Everyone said he was a fool. I didn't believe him. It turned out I was wrong. But he got ousted. And people said, well, I voted for him and now he's not. So I understand why they're disenfranchised. But the elite, whoever the elite are, there's many different types of elite. But the elite played a trick on us and conned us. And that was to make us believe our vote doesn't matter. And that con has worked because most people think their vote doesn't matter, so stay at home. And the reason why they played that trick on us, because they know our vote does matter. And if they can keep people at home who they disagree with, well, that's great. My people will come out and vote and I'll win.
Well, it's an interesting point, isn't it? Because what you're saying here is, and I haven't thought about it before, there used to be a situation where certain people weren't allowed to vote because it was felt that they didn't deserve a vote. Have we ended up creating that same situation now?
Yeah.
We're effectively stopping people who we don't think, the elite are stopping people who they don't think deserve to have a vote from voting.
Yeah, we are. And we've done it in such a sneaky way, they don't realise that they've been stopped from voting. They think it was their choice.
Yeah.
It's like the magician. Pick a card, any card. I always make sure you pick the card I wanted you to pick.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really interesting idea, isn't it? That actually the elite have manipulated things so the people they don't want to vote aren't voting.
Yeah.
And I guess the same thing is happening in America, isn't it? The way they structure the voting system now, the Democrats are trying to structure in such a way that the Republicans can't vote in certain areas.
Yeah. And this has always gone on. This has always gone on.
But that's quite scary, actually. Yeah. Moving on to crime. Sorry, we're steering off. We've gone off to America there. We shouldn't do. So every now and then I will see, even in Sale, where I live at the moment, I'll see a group of bikes coming down the road, young men on the bikes, no helmets, wearing black, no number plates on the motorbikes, and then they just kind of screech off at high speed. Or, sometimes they'll go on the pavement or whatever it might. Only occasionally, but I do see it. And these are basically youths who have got an illegal bike and they're just driving around having a bit of fun or whatever it is off the road. So one of the articles you picked up on here is that the off-road bike unit in the police is going to be re-established to try and stop these youths. Yeah. Having a bit of fun as far as I can see, Nick. I don't have a problem with them.
You will when they smash into your car and drive off, or smash in your car, you kill one of them, and then you're involved in a 2-year legal dispute about was it really your fault. You can get no money off them because they're not insured. Or your daughter's walking on the street and one drives right into a bike accident and smashes their face open. So that's where the issues are for the general public. I didn't know the police had disbanded their off-road bike unit because off-road bikes has been one of the top complaints of antisocial behaviour in Greater Manchester for decades now. I was dealing with this 20 years ago in East Manchester. And there's a way of tackling this. First of all, we need...
Does this tend to happen more in kind of council estates and working class areas than... Are they driving around more in those areas than they are? Right.
Because that's where a lot of them live. But you also get issues if you live next to a big park or some nice huge green fields because they want to be going on there. There's been many incidents where the local football pitch has been tore up because these bikes went on a Sunday evening and now the kids can't play football on anymore, or they're in the park so you don't let your kids in the park in case one of these kids drives into you or drives into your child. It's extremely dangerous because no tax, no insurance, no license, no helmet for them. The reason why they get away with it is because so many decades ago the police, again from political decision above it, went, we're not going to chase people on motorbikes if they haven't got a helmet because they may come off and the police will get blamed.
They may come off and hurt themselves.
Police will get blamed.
Yeah.
So we don't chase them anymore.
Yeah.
So what message did that send to all these communities? It meant, buy one, if you see the police ride off, they can't chase you. In fact, you might have been riding your illegal bike with a helmet because you're sensible, but you can get chased. So now you're forced now to take your helmet off so the police won't chase you. It was a wrong message to send. I'll be scrapping that directive, that guidance, if I become police crime commissioner. We'll be chasing anybody on the road on a legal bike. If they come off and kill themselves, the mayor will take full responsibility, and I'll basically say personal responsibility. If you're a child, it's your parents' fault. If you're an adult, it's your fault because you're breaking the law, and we will pursue anybody breaking the law in Greater Manchester. But if the police now are going to bring back this policing unit, which are off-road bikes for police officers, they're not very good at catching them, but they're good as a deterrent. How we catch people off-road bikes is by community intelligence. So we say to the community who are reporting these issues, tell us where these bikes live, because we'd rather get the bike with no one on it.
Yeah.
So if the bike lives at number 5 Coronation Street, and we go, right, that's a council house, it's a housing association property. We speak to the council, we speak to the housing association, we get a housing officer, we knock on a door, and we go, hi, yeah, I'm from the housing association. We've come to talk to you about antisocial behaviour in the area. Can we come in? Yeah, come in. Right. What's that motorbike doing in your kitchen? That's against your tenancy. You only get a warning now for this, having a dangerous petrol-filled bike in your house. That needs to get outside now. So the mum goes, right, get outside. The second they push it outside the house, the police goes, and now I'm confiscating it now because it's on a public highway. No tax, no insurance, I've confiscated it.
It's right in the garden there.
You've got to, yeah, but the housing officer goes, I want it off the property. The second it hits the pavement, the police officer can seize it. That's how we did it in East Manchester, and we took hundreds, literally hundreds off the streets. Then, a month later, we would organise in Asda car park in East Manchester a crushing event where we would get this bike crusher that would come with an arm. We'd have all the bikes on display. They would pick them up, put them in a crusher and crush them into little boxes, and we'd take photos, and we'd say to the people who are watching it, this is what we're going to do if you buy your kid an off-road bike.
This all sounds quite brutal and seems to be a victimisation of young working class white men.
Add the word criminal on into it, criminal men.
And I would like to maybe challenge this and say,
Okay.
Let's make, isn't the answer to this not being brutal like this, but actually making it easier for a young man to buy, tax, insure and ride a motorbike? Because when I was a kid, in the 70s,
Yeah.
all men, all young guys, 16, 17,
Yeah.
had what we call mopeds.
Yeah.
They were mopeds, they were 50cc
Yeah.
motorbikes, but they actually were really, really well made,
Yeah.
and they went really fast, and
Yeah.
they were proper little
I remember them,
motorbikes.
yeah.
They were cheap to buy, they were very fast, they were cheap to insure,
Yeah.
and as a 16-year-old, 17-year-old boy, it's great to have those things. But now, to buy a motorbike, you've got to pass certain tests. You've got to do this. You've got to do. So, by the way, you could drive these things without any tests.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just stick a learner plate on. Now it costs a fortune. You've got to take a test. You've got the insurance is high. The government, the council, whoever it is, are pricing people out of vehicles every single day. The proportion of men now who have a car, drive a car, has dropped right down. The proportion of 17-year-olds who pass their test when they're 17 has dropped right down because motoring is so expensive for young people. Isn't that the answer?
That's not the answer.
Rather than you crushing their motorbikes.
But it's a very good point. This feeds into the government's agenda for decades now of driving us off cars and motorbikes onto public transport.
Yeah.
So this does feed into that. Part of the answer would be, part of the problem is many of these young people wouldn't want a legal bike because they want to do what they want to do on that bike. And you'd lose your license if you're on the pavement. You'd lose your license for some of these things. But we have driven, you're right, we have driven some of the law-abiding individuals away from public transport, especially at 16, 17, 18 years old because they can't afford it.
Yeah.
Some of these problems are very complicated. I don't know how we get around some of those issues. We couldn't have taxpayers' money subsidising insurance for 16, 17-year-olds or buying them bikes. There's a market out there that the prices are the prices. We could reduce insurance by the government stop dictating what insurance, the extras on it. So we pay tax on insurance now. There's all sorts of things that would reduce insurance if government kept out of the way. But as initial response as mayor, who doesn't have that many powers, my only response would be they're illegal, they need to stop.
Yeah, I understand what you're doing.
Yeah.
What you're doing is addressing a genuine complaint of people about a particular situation, and that's your answer. I'm just saying, is the reason it's occurred in the first place because of the draconian impact that legislation's had on young people being able to drive vehicles of any kind, really.
Like most problems, there'll be many, many parts of why we have this problem.
I'll now make a dramatic statement. Six lads came round the corner. The next thing I knew, I was covered in blood. What happened, Nick?
Blakely.
And how are you feeling? Are you okay?
Yeah,
now?
I'm fine. That's Blakely, North Manchester. Some lad walking down the street turns a corner. These youths grab him, steal his phone, and because he was struggling, they stabbed him in the leg. They stabbed him in the leg because that's where, if they don't want to kill you, that's where they stab you. Because they don't want to stab you here in case you die. Still could kill you in the leg if they hit an artery.
Hit the femoral artery.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You still can die. Anyway, you get stabbed, you could die.
Yeah.
But I would. Yeah. So they stabbed him in the leg, so hoping not to kill him. But here is an air. I mean, Blakely's got some. I used to work in Blakely not that long ago. Blakely's got some issues. The parents in Blakely are up in arms. They have street demonstrations now because their kids are being robbed almost every day. Kids coming from other areas into Blakely and robbing their children, assaulting their children, stabbing their children. So hats off to the parents of Blakely trying to do something about it. But this is, what can they do apart from raise the issue? Our streets are unsafe, and they're unsafe for children. And this is what we're doing now to rob someone's
How old was this young
They're all teenagers.
You're right, okay. Yeah.
But absolutely terrifying if you're a parent.
Yeah.
If you're a young person that you're going to be robbed and you're going to be stabbed while you're being robbed. And we've got these gangs of youths walking around looking for targets. It's shocking, absolutely shocking what's going on in some of our neighbourhoods.
And what are the police doing about this?
Just what they always do, which will be very little. So they will increase patrols, but only with their existing officers. This is happening everywhere. So it's not like this is such a one-off, we now need to look at this crime in Blakely. Well, I could go to any neighbourhood in Greater Manchester and something like this has happened the last day or two. I interviewed someone from Wigan the other day, and some youths beat the crap out of some 14-year-old in the park, walked down the street, assaulted somebody else, then vandalised the car. And it's like, because we don't normally get issues here. And that was just a couple of days before I spoke to him. This is happening everywhere because our streets have become lawless. And young people and criminals in general are saying to themselves, chance of getting caught is almost zero. So where are the police? And I'm sure they're investigating crimes, but we need to get away from the police only turning up after the fact. So we need to investigate this crime now. How about we investigate less crimes, but we're more proactive to stop crimes happening in the first place? There'll be a rise in crime for that, I get that, and our stats won't look great for the first year. But then if we do it right, the number of crimes will start dropping, because that's what everybody wants.
Yeah, yeah.
If I asked a victim of crime, would you rather us find your offender and lock him up, or would you rather not be a victim of crime in the first place? The answer is, I'd rather not be a victim of crime in the first place. So that should be the police priority. But from government, the police get judged on certain crimes. How many of these crimes have you fixed? How many of these crimes have you found the offender? How many? Well, do you know what? If we didn't have those crimes, we'd get a bad report. Because how many burglaries have we solved? None, because we don't have any burglaries. Oh, well, that looks really bad. You solved no burglaries. Well, no, we have no burglaries. That should be what we're aiming for.
Yeah.
But the way we measure the police forces from central government is wrong.
Yeah.
And if Mayor, I'll be ignoring some of this. I'll be saying to government, we're not giving you the stats on that. Or, here's our stats, don't care how it looks. Don't care how it looks, because this is my strategy.
Yeah, but that may then determine how much money the force gets, doesn't it? That's the only problem.
It may do, and in which case I just need to tell the people why this is happening.
I think we talked last time about your approach to the police force, and I think one of the things you suggested was zero tolerance.
Yes.
And that is something you would put in place.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that that's something that's worth exploring further at some point. This approach, your approach to policing, because I think the people would be interested in that.
Yeah.
I think that would be, if you could get the message out to the people in the right way. There's another incident here, and this happened in Stockport. Again, Stockport is, I would say, relatively middle class. A lot of it's quite sort of low.
Lots of it.
Yeah.
So there's some tough estates on there as well.
Yeah. Suspects named and set to face court after teenager attacked with a substance, and I think this was a burglary taking place. So what happened here that interested you?
So normally you wouldn't expect, if you're being burgled and you catch someone burgling your house, that they're going to spray a corrosive substance in your face, and that's what's happened here. 2 men have been arrested. Again, how have we got to a stage where burglars now, instead of carrying, luckily he's not been stabbed, because you don't know who's carrying a knife, but these burglars have probably worked out themselves, if I get caught with a knife burglaring, then it's this offence and I might get so many years in jail. But spraying corrosive substance in someone's face is only this offence, and that's probably less. So they may have worked out that it's better to have that. Or it just might have been a coincidence. But how have we got criminals now who care so little about their victims that they're willing to spray stuff in people's faces just so they can...
I think that's the point on this one, isn't it? It's a very premeditated decision they've made, but to do something that's premeditated and horrific.
Yeah.
Because you would think, wouldn't you, if a burglar goes to rob somebody's house, they may have a knife with them, but their intent is not to stab somebody particularly. It's to defend themselves or get over whatever. But somebody's gone here in this situation with a corrosive substance, knowing that if anything happens, and they will then spray this corrosive, and it is horrific. If you think about it, it's a horrific. I think it's far more horrific than carrying a knife or even carrying a gun, because you are going. If there is an interaction, you are going to badly hurt and disfigure that person. Yeah. Whereas when you've got a gun or a knife, you're hoping you can maybe threaten with it.
Well, when you pull it out, there's a threat there.
Yes.
And you can back off then.
Yeah.
When you pull out a squeegee bottle.
Yeah.
No one knows what that is.
Yeah.
You don't even see it.
Yeah.
So you don't. There's no chance of you going, oh, I'm backing away here now because there's a danger to me. So you're right. There's more chance of you using it.
There's a premeditated decision to harm somebody there without giving them even a warning. Yeah. Basically. Yeah. Which is quite horrific. And you then question the morality, the mentality, the thought process of these people.
And that's the point why I want to raise it. It's not the fact it was a crime. It's the fact how are we creating this generation of criminals who care so little about other people. I can understand, and it's quite easy to understand why people steal things, because you want something, but most people who steal things wouldn't want the person hurt that they're stealing
Yeah,
from.
you would imagine so.
You'd imagine, yeah, I'm sure most people who are criminals wouldn't want to hurt anybody in the process. But how are we creating these individuals who still want to steal, but who don't mind blinding you in the process?
Yeah. I mean, once I was burgled in Leeds when I lived in Leeds, but all the burglar did, there was there was a knife left, I think at the side of my bed. I was asleep. I was just as a student. But the worst thing they did a poo in the hat. And apparently the police officer who came told me that's quite common.
Yeah. It's because of the adrenaline, it's the fight or flight, and your body's telling you you need to get rid of these things out of your body because you might have to run, you might have to fight, and your body's trying, that is quite common.
I thought it was horrible.
Did you do it in the toilet?
No.
On the floor?
On the floor.
No. Yeah. Again, maybe you didn't use a toilet in case the plop, 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 plop woke someone up. Yeah.
It's a kind of corrosive substance, but luckily it wasn't.
Or maybe he's just marking his territory. If you'd have caught him, you should have rubbed his nose in it like you do with dogs.
I just thought I'd drop that in there as something of interest. Moving on to Motorists now, a new section in this local area, and I think that you said you'd like to interview these guys. They stood up to the council when they tried to block their streets, and this is in Withington, and it's this awful low traffic LTN thing, low traffic neighbourhood thing. But this is a kind of a good story, I suppose. Is that right? So what happened?
So Withington is in South Manchester, next to Disbury. There were some streets there that were being used as a rat run, so the council decided to put some wooden planters in a low traffic neighbourhood. You plot the streets off, make some one way, you make it hard for people to drive through. And what happened very quickly was all the neighbouring streets then got all the traffic. There was an incident beginning of the year, I think it was beginning of this year, if not end of last year, where a mother on one of the streets phoned for an ambulance for her sick baby. Ambulance couldn't get to the house, was driving around trying to get past these planters, had to park 1 or 2 streets away and then run on foot to the house to inspect the baby. The baby then they only could take so much equipment with them. You know, you've been in the back of an ambulance, it's like an operating theatre. The stuff we have no idea what to do. Yeah. They had to take the baby to the ambulance, so they had to take the baby in their arms and walk 1 or 2 streets away to get it in the back of an ambulance. Absolutely shocking, especially if you're a mother of a sick baby and the services can't get to you. So the residents started petitioning, campaigning, protesting, and finally the council's backed down. For the moment, they've not said this is permanent, so they've removed the planters, but they haven't said they're not coming back. They've just said something like, we're going to review this situation now. This is what people power does. So if you live in a neighbourhood and you get all your neighbours together, the vast majority of, they don't have to be everybody, the vast majority of people, and you complain and you let councillors know, you'll lose your seat in this area if you don't do as you're told. That's how you get change. Moaning about it, complaining about it doesn't work. You've got to show the people in charge, who are the elected councillors, you'll lose this seat if you don't start doing what we want you to do, and that's what they did.
Right.
Well done to them. So one of the first experiments in Manchester for low traffic neighbourhoods has failed. Good. And we need to make sure they don't start it somewhere else or bring it back. I don't think they will bring it back here now. I think the council's now got a bloody nose. They've not said, definitely they're not bringing it back, because I think they're trying to keep some face.
But I think I've seen these though. I'm sure I've seen these in Stretford, around there, where they stick a planter at the end of this.
Yeah.
I'm sure I've seen these.
Yeah, but this is just Manchester, so Manchester Council.
All right, okay.
That'll be Trafford.
I think Trafford are doing this already.
The area in Greater Manchester it's happening to, but these people said no, we're not having it.
Yeah.
And they fought back. You can fight back against these things.
And it's this constant, isn't it? Constantly trying to control our lives all the time, to limit what we do, to stop us doing things that we've been used to doing for years.
Which is driving.
And driving. Yeah. It's just unbearable to me, this. And it's the traffic cones, the bicycle lanes are the same thing as well, isn't it? You know, it's just kind of, we've decided this is the right thing. Nobody else has actually raised it as an issue or whatever. We've decided, we know what's right, and we're going to do this, and we're going to stick a low traffic neighbourhood in your area, whether you like it or not. But actually now the people here said, we don't like this, we didn't ask for it,
Yeah.
you need to get rid of it, which is
Yeah.
great news.
It
Which
is.
is great news, but very rare.
Very rare. So the council probably would say it's because of speeding cars. Right, I get that, they're dangerous. Well, tackle the speeding cars, because if you make that a low traffic neighbourhood, do you think those speeding cars were only speeding on those two streets? Or do you think it's a personal trait, it's a habit those drivers have? So now they're speeding on another street. So that doesn't stop people speeding. It just means we're now going to speed on the street next door.
Correct.
So tackle the issue, which is dangerous driving. And of course, I'm pro motorist, but I'm not pro bad motorists. So let's penalise speeders. Let's penalise people driving dangerously. But let's not penalise all drivers because we have one or two who we need to sort out. And that's what these low traffic neighbourhoods do.
I mean, I'll ask a question now and you probably don't have the answer. Did they have any empirical, factual data that they based these decisions on? Was it based on the number of deaths that occur in the area? Was it based on air pollution? What the decision to make this a low traffic neighbourhood, what drove that?
Not 100% sure, but I would imagine it was based on reports of speeding cars, because people reporting speeding cars on their streets.
Yeah.
And I would imagine it's those sort of reports. They then would have gone out to consultation, because the council can't do this without speaking to anybody. They went out to consultation, and what you do as a council is if you go out to consultation, you then make sure the groups who support this decision get the electronic consultation. So they sent it to the walking groups, the cycling groups, and all of them go, we want this and that, yeah, tick that box. But that then outweighs the local people on those streets, because you don't do a consultation and have to only speak to those two streets.
Yeah.
You can have a much wider consultation and make sure you get the answer you want. That's how councils basically get these sort of decisions.
They steer the consultations to people who they know will support it.
Exactly.
Yeah, to the knit your
Andy
own.
Burnham did it with the Clean Air Zone. Andy Burnham, if you look at who signed, under 5,000 people signed, did the consultation for the Clean Air Zone. And when you look at it, most of them were connected to the cyclist campaigns and this campaign, and that's like, well, you already support this.
Yeah.
You just go to the people who you know will give you the answer you want.
And that leads us nicely into Andy Burnham, and we're going to do a more detailed podcast on Andy Burnham later. Andy Burnham, in a visit to West Houghton. Where is West Houghton, by the way?
It's Bolton.
Bolton. Oh yeah, Bolton.
West
So this is in the Bolton news.
Yeah.
Pledges no return to the CAS or the Clean Air Zone on his West Houghton visit. And for the viewers, the Clean Air Zone that Andy Burnham put together cost us £300 million. So
And never started.
So he's pledged. So he's spent 300 million quid of our money on something, and then he's now pledging, like he's doing us a favour. It's never going to come back. So what the hell's going on here?
So he said this a couple of months ago that he's not going to implement the Clean Air Zone now, but he said it to the press. This is the first time, because he's campaigning now to be re-elected, this is the first time he's been in front of the general public. He had a walkabout in Bolton, visit some shops, and of course they've mentioned this to him. So now he's now said it to people. I'm not going to implement the Clean Air Zone. The Clean Air Zone that I wanted in the first place, asked Parliament to give us, the Clean Air Zone that I decided was going to cover the whole of Greater Manchester, the Clean Air Zone I decided was going to charge motorists to drive, that Clean Air Zone. So he's not going to implement it now because the public went mad and he thought he was going to lose votes and lose his position as mayor, so he's cancelled it after spending something like 300 million of our tax money on a project now he says he's never going to implement. It's good that he said it, because nobody wants this, but he's saying it during the election. But the next questions we need to ask him is, okay Andy, why are the cameras still up? Why are all the signs still up saying coming soon? My fear tells me that the Clean Air Zone's dead in the water. Now he's said that, you can never go back on it. You can't do that. You can rebrand it, call it a ULEZ, change the area a little bit, and this is a new scheme now, a new scheme. The mayor that comes after him doesn't have to live up to his promises. The new mayor, let's say Andy Burnham wins this election, but then we get an election next year, we get a new mayor in who wants charging people pay per mile. Well, the infrastructure's there waiting for someone to flick a switch.
And has anybody asked him that question?
Not publicly, that is that to answer.
Right. Why don't people ask him these questions?
He makes sure he's never in a situation where anyone could ask him that question. And I would imagine when they ask him that question, his answer will be, well, I don't own the cameras. There's nothing I can do about the cameras. You know, this is national government paid for the cameras.
On his instigation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, his project. Only the mayor can instigate this project.
Yeah.
So if only the mayor can instigate it, then surely only the mayor can disband it. And he's already said he's not implementing it. So get rid of the cameras. Sell them. You know, each camera must be worth tens of thousands of pounds second hand.
Yeah.
Because they've never been used. You know, they're as good as new, mate. They're as good as new. We may not have the boxes anymore to put them in, but they're as good as new, never been worked. So you could sell them, get a couple of million, get a few million back. I don't know how much you need to get back, but surely get a couple of million back and spend it fixing the potholes.
Yeah. Or fixing crime.
Yeah.
Yeah, or putting together the off-road bike unit. And just on this bit here, I mentioned to you the other day, there was a London, when Sadiq Khan was at one of his, what was that meeting where?
Hustings.
One of his hustings. There's a guy, a bodybuilder in London who's also running for London Mayor.
Mitchley.
Yeah, I think you said you met him or
I've interviewed him on my channel. If you want to watch the video, go on my channel. You'll find it under Nick Talks.
And in the hustings, this guy stood up and started saying...
Because he wasn't invited to them.
He wasn't invited.
Just like I'm not invited.
He wasn't invited to the husting, but he went
in the audience.
You can't stop him sitting in the audience. Yeah. And he actually stood up and challenged Sadiq Khan on knife crime.
Yeah, yeah.
He's basically saying, stop talking about this, where our young people are dying on the streets. What are you doing about it? And it actually embarrassed Sadiq Khan. I think he was uncomfortable. Yeah. And I think I've said, Nick, I want you to do that to Andy Burnham. So is Andy Burnham having hustings?
There's hustings going on every day. I'm just not invited to hardly any of them. I'm not invited to. I got invited to one the other day. It was on Monday.
With Andy Burnham? Yep,
Andy Burnham would have been there, but I was invited as in, we're going to have a panel with all the proper candidates. Then we're having lunch, Nick. And if you want to come, we'll give you a couple of minutes at the end.
What, in lunch? During the lunch, you mean?
After lunch.
Oh, on the actual panel?
No, just me. So we're going to talk to the proper candidates first, as a debate. People can ask them questions.
Who's going to talk to them?
The audience.
Yeah.
They'll all be sat on the stage. Then we're having lunch. Most people will go home, and then after lunch, you can have a couple of minutes by yourself.
On your own, on the stage?
Oh, yeah. It was like, no, I'm not. No, not treating me like that.
Yeah.
But at least they invited me.
Yeah, that's good.
We had the Small Business Federation, I think it's next day to having hustings. I'm the only person standing who has a separate business manifesto, and I'm the only person, to my knowledge, who has set up several small businesses. I'm the only candidate not invited. And it goes on, and I knew this was going to happen. I'm not complaining, because this is the game we're in. Independents are treated extremely poorly, and independents who do not toe the political line are not invited, because all these organisations want change, but only want change that will benefit them. I'm a disruptor. I'm changing everything. So I'm not invited because I don't want that much change. You only want a little bit of change, which means we get more money. I'm going to be tipping the system upside down. So I'm not invited to any of them. But I knew that anyway.
But I would, and I think your gentle viewers would like to see you go to a hustings and challenge Burnham on this sort of stuff. I think they would love it. They would love it.
I see the benefits of it, but I also see the negativity of it. I'm not sure if it would be a benefit for me or a negative for me. Not sure if it makes me look like a bit of a lunatic. I don't know. We've not got another couple of weeks, so maybe...
The guy in London didn't look like a lunatic.
No, he's a nice guy.
I mean, he came across as actually a concerned citizen asking a question that nobody else gets a chance to answer. and he was actually dragged out, which I think made him look even better.
Yeah.
He didn't. He wasn't dragged out, but he was.
Yeah, he was asked to leave and
asked to leave
escorted out by security.
And all that sort of stuff. And I thought.
And he's a bodybuilder. He's a huge.
Yeah, he's a big guy. Yeah, I thought, yeah, good. You know, well done. And I was quite impressed. So, but somebody needs to say to Andy Burnham, 300 million quid of our money you've spent for nothing. Something you're now boasting about the fact you're not going to implement.
Yeah.
What the hell are you doing with our cash? What about that 300 million being put into the police?
Yeah.
To reduce crime in Buckley and Rochdale and all those places. You know?
Use that 300 million to police the speeding cars.
Yeah.
So then you're fixing one problem, you know, or fixing the potholes.
Yeah.
Or there's so much stuff that could be fixed in Greater Manchester.
Yeah. Not the speeding cars, Nick. Will you just leave the drivers alone?
I know we all speed.
I think you're a bit of a copper at heart, I think.
No, it's at heart, my philosophy is if we have laws, we must enforce them. If we don't like those laws, we must get them off the books.
Yeah, but nobody dies on speeding cars on a motorway. They don't. There's hardly any deaths on motorways. Yeah, so it makes no difference.
In which case, we need to campaign for higher speed limits on motorways.
Correct.
Not, I'm breaking the law, because we've had this conversation before. The laws you are willing to break might not be the same laws I'm willing to break.
Yes.
And that's how society crumbles away.
Yeah.
We have laws or we don't have laws. If we want different laws, let's get different laws.
No, let's have laws, but let's have less laws.
Oh, absolutely.
Less laws.
Absolutely.
This is what because just going through all this stuff, it's always about more and more policing. And I don't mean policing by police, I mean policing of our behaviours done a day-by-day basis.
Sugar tax is a good example.
Yeah, sugar tax. Cass is a good example.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know, just leave us alone, for God's sake.
I agree.
Anyway, moving on. Morality, our little morality and honesty section. And we all know about Angela Rayner, and it's relevant to Manchester because she I thought she was this house is in Stockport though.
She lived in Stockport at the time.
Yeah. So it is a Manchester story.
Yeah. She's the MP of Tameside.
She's the MP of Tameside, but she's from Manchester, I think.
Well, I don't know where she.
Anyway, this house is in Stockport, so there is a link. And Angela Rayner, who I really do not like, basically, she has vowed to step down if she's found to have committed a criminal offence, which at first blush sounds okay. Yeah, she's found to sit down. She's doing the honourable thing. Yeah. Why is that actually a rather devious comment to make?
Yeah, so I say this to people all the time. Scrutinise the words politicians use because there's usually a get out clause in almost everything they say. Words like maybe, could, should, would, my aim is to. None of those things are definites. So be careful when a politician uses things like that. She said this is all to do with her not paying tax on the sale of her former council house. Yeah. So she said if she's committed a criminal act, she will resign. Right. If you don't pay your tax on the house you've sold, capital gains tax, doesn't necessarily make it a criminal act. You may have not understood the law. You still may owe the money, but I didn't understand that. I thought this meant that. They're all mitigating circumstances. You'll still have to pay that tax, but it's not a criminal act. A criminal act in tax is when you actively, with intent, lie, manipulate so you don't have to pay tax. If she's not lied, but she's misunderstood the form or anything like that, then it's not a criminal act anymore. So she still may be found guilty of not paying tax, have to pay. I think we're looking at $2,000. It's not that much money, but that's not the point. So be careful of her saying that. Now, another reason why I want to talk about this as well is, first of all, she's not been found guilty of anything yet. So I don't want to be penalising and degrading people for something that hasn't been proven yet. But let us be honest. Most people, if they can, want to avoid paying tax. She wasn't an MP when she did this. This was a house in Stockport, a former council house that she bought, got married, moved in with her new husband to his house, and that house was either empty or we believe it was being rented out to a brother or something like that. She claims that house was always her main residency.
Yeah, principal private residence, PPR.
Yeah, and that's why when she sold it, she'd have to pay tax on it. her neighbours are saying, she didn't live here for years. You know, we didn't see her. There's videos of her online talking about, you know, buying new cushions for a house and this and that, and it was the other house she's living in, her husband's house. So she's got some questions to answer here. If she's found guilty, she'll pay the tax back. But my main point on this is, A, we expect more from we should expect more from our politicians. Here is a politician who's constantly attacking everybody else for being rich, for not paying their taxes, for having dodgy deals, for this, for that. We all need to pay more tax. She wants us to pay more tax because she wants to spend it. She's a socialist. And when you look at all that, you go,
why are you
but
paying
you're not paying your fair share of tax if you're found guilty. She would, if she's found guilty and has to repay that tax, and it's not a criminal offence, she should still resign, because as a socialist, all her policies around people paying tax. And if she can't pay her tax, most socialists don't want to pay tax. I want your money to spend. I'm not spending my money on this. I want your money to spend. And that's always the mantra of a socialist. Hence why most socialists we know are usually millionaires. Gavin Neville, Diane Abbott, Corbyn, all these, Gary Lineker, all these people who go on about socialist policies are all multi-millionaires.
Who are in a position to virtue signal about these things. Aren't there a few grubby stories around Angela Rayner? Wasn't there something about some AirPods she bought on the using her expenses?
So she has so every MP has expenses. It's something like up to £250,000 a year. And she bought several sets of very expensive Apple AirPods. When she could have bought, I'm making the figure up now, £250 each. When she could have bought something very similar on Amazon for 25 quid. Same with some iPads and stuff like that. She's entitled to buy what she wants to buy on her expenses.
But how are those expenses?
Pardon?
Well, how are those expenses at AirPods?
Because she'll say, it's when I'm on a Zoom call, when I'm doing this, when I'm doing that, I need stuff like that.
Maybe.
It's up to the people, it's up to her constituents to work out if that is an issue for them or not. If it's an issue for them that you're wasting all your expenses, then they shouldn't vote for her again. If they don't mind her having the best stuff to do her job, well, they should vote her in again. We need to get away from how we're nitpicking politicians all the time. It's not down to us as citizens, it's down to the voters in their areas. Unless she's breaking laws.
But I think the point I'm making is there's a bit of a nasty smell around Angela Rayner about things like this tax thing, about the AirPods, about her general behaviours, which goes back to your point about morality and honesty, the expectation that our politicians have to be squeaky clean. And certainly, I would say in the 70s, 60s and 70s, if a politician had a hint of scandal, they would resign.
No one resigns. Have you noticed that? No one resigns anymore now. No one resigns.
We had the example in the last podcast where the guy who sent a picture of his penis, William Wagg, didn't resign. He had the whip taken off him, I think. Is that right? Oh no, he resigned.
He resigned the whip.
Before.
He didn't resign being an MP.
Correct.
So he's still keeping his 92 grand a year. I'm just not Conservative anymore now. I'm going to keep them.
Very convenient.
He should have said, this is disgraceful, I'm resigning, I'm stepping down as MP, or I'm stepping down as MP, I'm going to run again to see if the people still want me. That's an honourable thing to do. And if the people vote him in again, the people have voted him in again.
You mean he should almost call a by-election?
Yes, call a by-election. See if now you found this about me, do you still want me?
I think that's fair.
That would be honourable.
You make a point here, and I'm guessing you're talking about Tameside now, that a Labour mayor is in charge of the police, or are you talking about Stockport?
Oh no, so it will be...
Is this part of the same story?
No. So this I want to follow on. So again, about honesty and integrity. So obviously I try to twist everything to Andy Burnham, don't I? I'm running
quite right.
So Andy Burnham's in charge of the police.
Yes.
We need... So
I thought it was part of the same story. No. So the integrity part of it. So obviously I try to twist everything to Andy Burnham, don't I? I'm running. So Andy Burnham's in charge of the police. Yes. We need... I thought it was part of the same story.
No. So, so again, about honesty and integrity. So Andy Burnham was looking like he was in trouble because of the Rochdale grooming gang scandal. And also we had some people coming out saying they've been sexually assaulted by police officers. One woman claimed she was raped in a Salford police station and drugged, and all the footage, some of the footage were missing.
Yeah.
So now we don't know what happened in a 2-hour period, which is like, that's suspicious for a start. So if we're looking at honesty, integrity, so Andy Burnham wanted this investigating. So who did he appoint to investigate it? He appointed a Labour peer. Not a peer, not some, no, and she has got some good qualifications behind her for this sort of stuff.
Who was it?
I forgot her name now. But the fact she sits in the House of Lords as a Labour peer and he's a Labour mayor, why don't you come, buddy? And investigate this. I'm not saying this report that he's delayed now and won't release it till after the election. That's quite convenient. I'm not saying she's been paid off. I'm not saying she's corrupt. I'm just saying honesty and integrity. Justice has to look like it's being done. And if you employ your buddies to investigate stuff, no one's going to believe what they come back with. That person should have been fully independent, not connected to the Labour Party. But no, our politicians don't do that. They get their mates to investigate themselves. Jeremy Corbyn, when he was Labour leader and he was accused of anti-Semitism, he got Shami Chakrabarti to investigate anti-Semitism in the Labour Party, and she came back with, there isn't any. A couple of months later, she's then made a Labour peer. It's like, we can't trust this report, can we?
No.
And I just want our politicians to get to a stage where we start believing them again. A little bit more than we do now.
You're not cheering me up today with all this stuff at all. Not at all. But yeah, Andy Burnham. If you want to get rid of Andy Burnham, folks, vote for Nick Buckley, MBE. Thank you, Nick.
I support that message.
You fully endorse it. Thank you.
If you like that video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell and comment. And if you like what I'm saying about running for Mayor of Greater Manchester, then stick around. Tell your family, tell your friends. The only way I'm going to have a chance of winning is a grassroots movement. So be part of that movement and hit that bell. Thanks.